This is the story of a mother's enduring love for a son and his love for her, just as it is a story about giving him up, letting him go. This is a story about courage, just as much as it is a story about fear. It's a story about those who stepped up, stepped in. It's also a story about waiting and wondering. We'll call it the forever bond, because that's what it was and is. Despite the miles, the years. We won't leave you in suspense. This story has a happy ending. Or maybe it's better to call it a happy new beginning.
Well, Audrey, basically you're seeing history being made because Mom and I, up until 2 weeks ago, hadn't seen each other in almost 52 years.
We saw history being made just a few days after Walter Little, then 52, and his mom, Joyce Angerstein, then 72, reunited in person. We spoke with them as Jack, Walter's wife, Mary Lou's service dog, was kept at bay with constant treats. Before we tell the rest of the story and hear from licensed clinical social worker Linda Weiskopf, an expert on the mother-child bond known as attachment, let's step back in time for just a moment. We met Walter in 2015 at the American Red Cross in Atlanta for a story on volunteerism. He had served as a longtime volunteer with the Disaster Action Team. He helped with intake, interviewing people who'd been burned out of their homes, for instance. He'd also been a longtime volunteer firefighter, and he was working toward the Wood Badge, the highest rank as a Boy Scout leader. He's been happily married to his sweetheart, Mary Lou. Time passed. Technology changed.
It was October 2015, and I got up to check my Facebook, and I had a friend's request from Susan Barksdale. And I thought for a minute, Susan, and I'm like, cousin, Arizona. And so I approved the friend's request, and we got to talking that afternoon on Facebook through Messenger. And she said, honey, let me be honest with you. Your mama asked me to do this. And my reaction was, Mama? Mama? And she said, yes, honey. I said, is she okay? She said, yes. Said she and your stepdad live in Dallas, Texas. And it was that night she put me in touch with Poppy. His name is Paul. But I call him Poppy. Well,
that's what the grandkids call him.
She put me in touch with Poppy, and that's how Mom and I communicated for the first few months, was either through Susan or through Poppy. Well, back in late February.
No, it was late March, baby.
Okay. Now I was saying the night that Poppy sent me the message. He sent me a message on Facebook, and he said, son, your mama wants to talk to you. Are you emotionally up to talking to her? Yes, sir. Definitely, yes, sir. So Mom called, and we talked for just shy of 2 hours. And every night since then, we talked anywhere from, depending on how tired we are, 5 minutes to, we may do the 2 hour thing again. Because after almost 52 years, there is so much to catch on up with. And even though we've been together, 24/7 for the last 2 weeks, I still have to ask her when we start talking about somebody, now, who is this again that we're talking about?
He has a half-brother. He has two nephews and a niece.
A niece, a sister-in-law, a 92, almost 93-year-old grandmother, and 3 or 4 aunts, Mom. two aunts that I never knew anything about.
My husband and I have been married, will be November 1st, 48 years. He knew about him, but he couldn't my husband don't remember names real well. And the night he got the first email, he said, "There's a Walter Thomas Little. Do we know one of them?" I said, "Yes, we do. That's my son." And he said, "Well, he's looking for you." He said, "What do I say?" I said, "Tell him I'd like to talk to him."
And talk they did, even when the going soon after got tough.
I had been in the hospital. I suffered a heart attack. And Mom and I were talking twice a day at that point. But let me tell you what happened the night of the heart attack. I was so worried about how Mama would react when I called her. I made sure I didn't vary from my routine. I waited till 10 o'clock local Atlanta time to call her, which is 9 o'clock her time. And I told her, I said, "Mama, you need to sit down. I've got some bad news." And without missing a beat, she says, "You had a heart attack."
But there was more, much more to his story.
Mom was
19.
19 when she had me, and Daddy was 21. And like most young couples, they had their rough spots. And Mom just thought it would be better for all concerned if they went their separate ways. And we both said the day we saw each other for the first time that we'd given up hope of ever seeing each other again.
Well, I gave him up to my ex-husband, but the grandparents raised him, and I appreciate it. But
when you were 19 years old, you were a kid.
yeah, and I cried when I left Atlanta on Saturday. I cried all the way to Texas. And when I got to Texas, I had no idea where I was going to live, how I was going to make a living, none of it. But back then, I knew I was 19. I didn't know how to raise a child that had a problem. And I felt then that it was in the best interest of him to let somebody else take him.
The problem his mother referred to was this. Walter was born with hydrocephalus, a condition involving the excessive buildup of fluid in the brain and a larger than normal head size.
Well, I had been in Texas. I had taken him to Texas with me to see my mother, and that's another different story. But I didn't have the relationship with my mother that most girls have, and I didn't have nobody. My dad was dead. My grandmother didn't understand, and so I just struck out on my own. And there's not been a birthday go by or Christmas go by that I hadn't thought about it.
I mean, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. Confused, scared.
I had a very ugly childhood. And we both was wanting away from home, so we just got married. And it was the biggest mistake. I mean, not because of him, but it turned out that we both made a mistake. And I've lived with that, had to live with that all my life. And the man I'm married to now knows all about it, and he's helped me through a lot of rough spots, especially on his birthday.
When's your birthday?
October 24th.
What happens on October 24th?
I go to pieces.
And I have to say, on that day, I felt something, but I never knew what it was until she said what she did. Then I realized our hearts commingle that day. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're two peas in a pod.
When people, on that day, I don't go around nobody. I stay far away from people as I can.
But this year it's going to be different.
Joyce admits she'd kept tabs on Walter for a while, but that ended decades ago.
I had an aunt out here, and
My Aunt Barbara.
she was friends with somebody that was friends with his grandmother. And they kept me informed. She kept me informed up until she died. And she's been dead. I think, let's see, my mom, boy, you about broke my arm. I think my mom died in 98, and I think my aunt died in like 95, 96.
I think that's what Susan said was 95.
Yeah. And I've had, like I say, it's been wonderful being here, but I'm going home tomorrow so I can see my husband, because we both retired from the school district out there.
What'd you do?
I was a bus monitor. He was a bus driver. And I worked mostly with special ed kids.
That's interesting. Given that your son had some special needs.
Yeah. I've worked with special ed kids, and I enjoy working with the special ed kids. They're so different from just the regular kids on the school bus. They're more respectful, where the other kids, they've lost their minds. They have no manners.
That's Poppy.
Wow.
And then, let's see. That's Poppy. That's Mama. That is my brother Warren. This is my Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike was just before coming home on R&R in the Vietnam War, and he was killed. This is my grandmother. She's the one that's 93.
You never knew these people until
Until I met Mama.
A man come pick me up at the church, was their friend, and he got me up to just to the top of the steps, and I couldn't believe how much he looked like me. My grandson, right after I found him, he come over the house one day, and he said, Mama, Mama, I found him, and I'm going, you found who? I call him Thomas.
She's the only one that has permission to do that.
He said, I found Thomas, Mama. Look at these pictures. Mama, he looks just like you.
And I do. I mean, the piercing brown eyes, the hair color. I mean, and our health conditions are identical. The only difference is I don't have the
heart valve,
and I haven't had the knee replacement yet.
He may end up having that heart surgery.
But it was like standing at the top of the stairs, looking up at it. He was standing in the door. It was like seeing myself.